El Camino People, the podcast, episode 8. Pilgrims, and welcome to El Camino People, the podcast. Today with you, your host, Jose Maerdena. And today we have news about what the Camino is going to be looking like. So far, we've been in quarantine for a long time here in Spain. And it seems that we are going to be on quarantine for a little more, at least till May 9th. But the news that we have so far is that the Camino will be closed probably, all this year for international people. And maybe, we will be able to, the ones that will live here in Spain, to get out around August or something like that. But still, everything, if the albergues and all the hostels and hotels can do all the requirements from the government to keep everyone healthy and safe. So, not really news at all, or some news maybe for some, but still we don't know, and as things develop, we'll get more information about everything. So far, we will also have some news about the Sacobeo. It looks like it may be, extended. Santiago, the cathedral, has asked to the Pope in Rome to see if, now that the things look like maybe, they're opening for international travelers and for anyone maybe June, July next year, to extend the Sacobeo for at least, another year, so people can come from all over the world and walk the Camino. But, it is what it is. We will keep up with the news and trying to keep you guys informed. But till then, stay tuned and listen to a podcast. Today we have a great podcast with us. Are you ready? Hi everyone, and welcome to El Camino People, the podcast. Today we have somebody from the UK. Her name is Amanda, and she has a quite interesting story. She walked the Camino de Santiago, but she wasn't walking by herself. She decided to walk with 2 dogs and a van. And you may ask yourself, how do you do the Camino with 2 dogs and a van? So that's what we want to learn. Hi Amanda, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
So tell us, Amanda, which part of the UK are you from?
I'm right from the centre of the UK in the Peak District.
Wow, I love the UK. I used to work in the Lake District for a while in the summer. Such a beautiful, it's quite a place, lovely. And so in which year you decided to walk the Camino?
September 2018.
2018. And how was that you discovered the Camino? And like nowadays, we know, that a lot of people has seen the movie The Way, or they have read the book from Paul Coelho, The Pilgrim, or many other reasons. In your case, how do you come familiar with the Camino?
It's a bit of an unusual one, really. I actually found a lady putting photographs on Instagram of her travel on the Camino, and was curious as to where it was, and realised it was in Spain and it was the Camino. So I got in touch with her and started finding out a bit more about it, really.
Wow, so it was all about photography, so you didn't read anything, it was just the beautiful landscapes or the churches? Or yeah. Was there anything specific that you remember that were like, it changed your mind and it's like, I want to be there?
It was just the absolutely stunning scenery and the little quaint villages. I just couldn't believe it was actually in Europe. It was just so beautiful. And I just decided there and then that I'd got to go someday, and sooner rather than later. So.
Wow, it's great. So, and then you see the Camino, you start getting more information, but you decided to walk with your 2 dogs. If I remember well, their names were Inca and Onyx.
Yes.
And I guess you are probably used to travel in the UK and to walk with your dogs.
Yeah, they're very well-travelled dogs. So I've done a lot of traveling around in a camper van with them, so they're quite at home really. So I did think about bringing them over, and just thought, well, why not? It can't be too impossible, and we'll just have to see. It wasn't the getting there; it was just the journey along the way, really.
Yeah, and that's what is really fun about the Camino, is about the journey. So when you started looking up to the Camino, what kind of planning? And like, one of the things, a lot of people ask is, when you travel from abroad, and traveling from Europe is easier, but traveling from different countries, when you're traveling with animals, do you have to do any specific planning? Do you have to do any specific paperwork to travel with your pets?
When I travelled in 2018, I had to make sure my dogs had their full immunisation, and which is up to date in the UK. I had to get them immunised against rabies, and then get their passport applied for, which was all done through the vet, quite an easy visit. And then they had to be boosted. So it was 2 visits to the vet. And then we were able to travel across Europe. So it really was quite straightforward.
Wow, that's why very easy. But I guess nowadays with the Brexit coming, we still don't know what is going to happen, even for humans. So is that going to change in a way for pets to travel from the UK over to Europe, or?
It could change quite considerably. So we're just waiting until next week comes along to see what they're going to finally decide on things now. The other considerations with travelling with the dogs was how to get across onto the European mainland. So whether we travelled by ferry or in the Eurotunnel, and in the end it was the easiest and less impacting on the dogs to travel via the Eurotunnel and take the vehicle with us. But I had read up,
because to travel by plane, that we know in Spain nowadays, if the dogs are small, they can go in the cabin if they go on a cage or anything. But I guess your dogs are not small, so what would be the options for them if they want to travel by plane?
I don't know how it would go on the plane. You could get the dogs to travel with you if they're assistance dogs in cabin with you, but I'm not sure I didn't look that up as an option really. Ferries, you have to make sure you've got muzzles, and you have to book them in on a kennel on board. So you have to book in quite in advance to get your place there. And then there are some ferries that go over to Spain or France that you can get to the south of England and hire a taxi, and then if you travel in the taxi with the dogs, you can do it that way. Yeah. And that's on there's a website over here that I can send you the link to for it.
Yeah, we'll put it on the notes for the program.
No, that's grand.
So after all of that, I guess the easiest way was to travel with your camper, and that was a no-brainer. I'm having to look for all that. Your dogs are used to the camper; they can be free in the camper. So you decided to drive all the way from the UK to Spain.
Yeah, never driven abroad before, so it could have been quite a short journey.
Wow! So how long was that?
It took me 2 days to get through France, and obviously September 2018 was one of the hottest summers on record. Yep. So we had to just accommodate working with the temperatures as well. So plenty of stops and just taking it steady, really. We allowed plenty of time, not so we were rushing under a schedule, which is quite a key indicator when you travel with animals. You've got to allow that mishaps might come up,
I guess traveling with animals is like traveling with kids. You will have to be ready to whatever happens.
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely.
So then you arrive, and the Camino that you decided to walk, I guess like everyone's in the first time, was the Camino Frances. I'm right? Yes. And then here's where the main problem begins. When Amanda decided to walk the Camino, what was your idea of dealing with your van, with your dogs, and with the Camino? How were you going to do it? Because it's kind of different than everybody else. I haven't listened or met anyone that has quite a way of looking at how to walk the Camino. Tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Well, planning to come onto the Camino, I wanted to actually backpack it and carry a tent right the way across. But I wanted to drive and leave my van and then come back to it later on. So I spent quite a while on the internet trying to find a car park or somewhere that I could leave my van, that it wasn't going to get towed away, being absent from it for quite a while. So I found that Roncesvalles car park up in the mountains was available for that. And so that's where I was originally going to be staying with my van. Leave my van and walk off. But the first day walking, I was just carrying far too much equipment and supplies for the dogs, because I just didn't know how much food I would need to carry and the availability in the villages. So it was quite a tough start, really.
Yeah, that's one of the things a lot of people have to remember, that in Spain, each state has a different law for campers. So usually if your camper is just a normal camper, you can park it whenever you want. But as soon as you open the tent or you put anything outside, that's camping, and that's illegal. So you have to be really careful with the main villages and everything, because as I said, with the camper, that's like a normal vehicle. You can park it anywhere you want. But once you are camping or glamping, if you are a little more fancy, that you can get a big ticket for that. So if you're planning on coming to Spain with your camper, and the Camino, I think is a great idea in cases like this, that you can do it for a family or for someone traveling with a group, but take ahead with any of the different states, because the laws may change. So then you go to do all your research. You decided that Roncesvalles was a great place to start the journey. And how everything begins. And like, you drive all the way to Roncesvalles, 2 days of driving. I guess you were probably tired. The dogs were excited about being in a new country. And then you start to walk.
We did. I was quite lucky. I'm just going to bring back to my vehicle, saying it's a camper van. Really, it was a Fiat Doblo, so it was still a factory car almost. It had the tinted windows, so it was quite stealth as a camper, really. So people on looking would actually see it as a vehicle rather than a big standalone camper van. So yes. I was going to spend a full day at Roncesvalles and then set off. I think I arrived on a Saturday evening, so I was going to set off on the Monday morning just to make sure villagers had their shops open more. I'd heard that quite a lot of shops shut on a Sunday on the Camino. So.
No, that's one of the things, and you guys in the UK are maybe more used to this, but as I've been living in the US, a lot of people, when they come to Spain, it's like, why are stores closed like in the midday? Or why do they close things on Sunday? I'm like, Spain is different. We don't open 24/7. During the summer, a lot of people, they do nap during the mid of the day from 2 to 5. Probably in the small villages, everything will be closed. But remember that you can always ask, and the people are super friendly. So if you are really in need, you will always find things. And the good thing when you're doing the Frances is you have a little village almost every 10 or 20K without a problem. So
that's definitely correct. The shops in the villages are very well stocked as well. They've got quite a good variety of supplies. So whether you're wanting to eat in a cafe or actually take almost like a packed lunch on with you, they're very well supplied, which is all what you don't find out really till you're on there. Same with medical supplies and the kiosk machines. They're really good as well.
Yeah, the only problem with the medical supplies is, the insurance for us. As we're Europeans, we have the European insurance cover. But for anybody from abroad, I will suggest to have a traveling insurance. And also, if you travel with any kind of medication, look ahead if you need any specific, if you have to go to, we call here the Centro Médico or the hospital, it will be super helpful. If anyone has any problem there, can always send us an email or a message. We have helped with many people passing here over Pamplona. So you start walking on Sunday, and you leave your camper over there. You have your tent, or what was the plan on that Sunday?
It was the Monday morning. Sorry,
Monday morning. Okay.
Yeah. So it was to lock my van up, disconnect the battery, and set off. And I got up tried to disconnect. Well, I disconnected the battery, and then my van wouldn't lock, so I had to connect it all back up again. Lock my van, and then I set off walking, and it was the actual only day I had rain on the whole Camino.
Wow.
So we were extremely lucky.
I don't know. I like my Camino with rain sometimes, but yeah, in September, yeah, it's a little colder. But so you start walking down to Subiri, and you leave your van already locked. The dogs were excited, I guess. Everything was going well. Or how was the beginning of the Camino?
It was very foggy and damp. I started walking along with a guy from one of the albergues, and we actually got on really well. But I found very quickly my bag was cutting into my shoulders. It was just so heavy. So I went over about 2 villages, and then I just thought, this isn't happening. I'm going to have to come back to my van and have a rethink. So we turned back that night, and I just thought, we've got so far now. We've got 2 months, because I allowed 2 months for our trip. And that night at the van, I tried taking a lot of supplies like clothing and all sorts out of my bag, and taking some of the dog food out, but it was still incredibly heavy. So I just thought, well, I'll give it a go with taking the van with us instead. So
because how many pounds were you carrying at the moment, more or less?
About 25 kilos.
Wow. So remember that usually the average on every forum and every article on the website is 10% of your weight. I hope you don't weigh 250 kilos, Amanda, and I don't think so.
I certainly don't.
And people look at your pictures, they will realize not. I'm used to backpack with my own tent and food and everything, and the maximum I allow myself to carry is 15, and I'm quite in good shape. So walking 25 kilos, how far did you make it?
I can't remember the name of the first village now.
But the first village, wow, that's quite impressive.
Was it the second village over? I can't think of the name now without looking it up just off the top of my head.
Anyway, anything walking with 25 kilos on your back, I'm like, that's huge.
Well, we did that with probably slightly less weight than that from Sarria later on, because we did leave the van again then to do the last 100 kilometres. But we didn't do the whole route with that weight. We walked with a day pack after that.
So then you decided to walk back, you rearrange everything, and what were the main problems? You know, a lot of people think, and I have spoken this with the other interviews in Spanish about the food for the animals and everything. How did you manage to carry? Did you carry a lot of food? Were you buying on every village you were stopping by, or what was your plan now that you already seen that traveling with 25 kilos is not but impossible?
I decided in the end to take the van with me. So the dogs are fed every morning and every evening, so I didn't need to carry their food in the day at all then. And just make sure I had plenty of water supplies on me. You see, carrying water for myself and 2 dogs in the heat was one of the other weight factors. So in a day pack, it made it a lot lighter. And we just made sure we walked every day, and then on the Camino, and then we walked back to the van. So it wasn't the same as everybody else's Camino, but it's what worked for us. So
every day you will do 10K one way and then walk 10K the other way or something like that?
Yeah.
And then you will drive to the finishing point and then repeat the next day?
That's what I tried to do at first, but as we went along, we didn't always find a nice little place to camp in a village or what have you. So sometimes I did drive on. As I say, we didn't make it right along the 800 kilometres of the Camino on foot. We ended up doing about a quarter of that. So we missed the Meseta route because it was too hot for the dog.
Yeah, that's not at the time.
Yeah, it was a very big learning curve, but the main thing for me was the welfare of the dogs and just having fun with them. You know, it was just making sure we all really enjoyed the trip, which was the paramount thing. So,
and that's the main reason of the Camino. You know, a lot of people now, there's a lot of, I would say, trolling on the internet about people that take trains or people that take buses. And, as I always said, anybody that walks you walk your own Camino. Let everybody walk his own Camino. You are nobody to judge. And in your case, you decided to walk the best Camino for you and your dogs. And it probably was at the time the best way of doing it, because walking the meseta with 2 dogs and the heat and walking on that, on the roads, that might be destroying for a dog that is used to walk in, in beautiful green pastures in the UK. So
yeah.
So finally, how do you ended up? How many you walk all the way more or less to Leon, and then you leave the meseta and start in Galicia again?
We did. We did a little bit just before Galicia, and then we went into oh gosh, it was so beautiful. I loved it over there. Yeah, it was really good.
So how was the walking with the dogs and the going back to the? I'm gonna say this. I don't know. Maybe there's some other people out there that did it the same way, but I don't think anybody has walked the Camino back and forth, back and forth, back and forth like you. How was the connection with the pilgrims? We are so used to walk and met people and keep walking with them, but in your case, you will be meeting new people almost every day until you probably jump ahead to Galicia, where you start seeing all that people again. How was that interaction with the people and your dogs? How were the dogs feeling with the pilgrims?
The dogs absolutely loved it. I was really lucky that they just took it all in their stride, because we were walking one Sunday and my older dog doesn't like gunshots, and they were shooting in the woodland.
Ooh.
And so she was a bit unresty about it, but she carried on. And then the day we were walking into Santiago, they were setting fireworks off in broad daylight. But she actually just never flinched by that point. So it was good that, because over in the UK, she'd have probably ran off. So
really, so she learned quite a bit through the Camino. It's not just as humans that learn to overcome fears, I guess.
Yeah. And before we just got to Sarria in Molina Seca, there's like a pool in the river, isn't there? That everybody.
Oh, I love that place.
It's beautiful, and so we went in for a swim one afternoon, but then we went to the other side of the bridge, and one of the dogs cut the foot with some glass.
Uh-huh.
So we had to rest up at a campsite for a couple of days. She was all right. We managed to get it. I always carried a first aid kit with me for the paws, because it's the easiest thing to get damaged is the dog's paws. So yeah, just making sure you had a bit of a first aid kit ready for the dogs, really.
So what kind of planning or training did you do with the dogs? I don't have a dog. I love animals, but I haven't walked with the dogs. I used to run with my friend's dog. But once you are walking and doing everything, I guess what kind of, a lot of people, they talk like they have like covers for the paws, like gloves or anything of kind of like of Vaseline. What was your trick for taking care of your dogs?
In the UK, we tried to up our walking distance quite considerably before coming over. So every day they need a walk, because the border collies, they're very active dogs. But I did take some boots over for them, but I only took them for an emergency, because dogs cool down through their paws.
Yeah.
So it's not fair to put a dog on hot tarmac in boots. It's just dangerous for them to overheat.
Wow.
If you start overheating, they very rarely come back from it. So
any kind of like a special thing with the diet? I guess, walking that many kilometers, they probably never walk it for so long, so many days. Did you do any specific vitamins or any specific food? How easy was to find the food that you were used to buy in the UK, in Spain? Was that a problem or wasn't?
I just bought they're on dried food in the UK, and I didn't keep it brand strict over there. There was one brand over there that really upset the stomach of one of my dogs while we were over there. So I had to start.
They don't like Spanish food?
it appears not on that day. But no, they did really well. And my vet, before going out, I was letting him know what I was planning, and he was advising to let them drink milk, because it replaces their electrolytes. And
milk?
My 2 dogs, love dairy, so that worked out really well.
Wow, it's quite interesting because the other day I was interviewing a couple from the US, and they did the Camino with the baby, and the baby they called the milk baby because that was the only thing he drank during the Camino, milk. So it's just funny how, so things so unrelated can be related. I guess milk, nowadays that people's like, oh, milk is not good. I'm like, I guess it's still some good from someone. So, and then how was your dog's behavior with the pilgrims? As you go back and forth, they will find in different people. How are the people interacting with the dogs?
We had some great interaction with the dogs. We had a lot of people really missing their dogs back at home, and but we did have some people that tried shouting the dogs over a little bit, and so they love a fuss from people. But then when they ran over to them, they'd like raise their hands up as in we didn't want their attention like that. And so I had to, after a couple of days happening, I had to just say to them that you can't shout them over. I had to keep the dogs or put them on a lead, just to stop them from running over to them. It just caused distress for both people and dogs, so it's just a thing to watch out. Yeah, because when you were walking the Camino with you, were the dogs on a leash or were they free, or how did you manage the Camino? If we were out of a village, they'd be off the lead because they don't chase anything, so I'm very lucky like that. But in towns and cities, I kept them on leads just for safety of vehicles and things like that, really.
Yeah, and that's the law now in Spain. They have to be on the leash unless they are in trails or anything. Even in some of the trails, they have to be on the leash, but still, it's one of those things that people don't encourage much. So, did you have any problem with a lot of people has talked about the dogs and animals in the Camino. Like probably when you get closer to Galicia, we have found a lot of wild dogs and other kind of animals. Was that a problem with your dogs, or was that something that you didn't encounter?
Well, while I was over there, my bitch came into heat, so we had many visitations.
There is love for everyone in the Camino.
So we had a few nights where we had a Portuguese mountain dog turning up at the van.
Why Portuguese? How did you know that he was a Portuguese one?
And then when we were setting off from Sarria in the tent, the first night we were in the tent, we heard a huge pair of lungs at the side of the tent sniffing, and it was just like, what is that?
But other than that, there wasn't any problem like crossing, villages. We have found so many people that they talk about the dogs and how, they are separate dogs, most of them, and they're just protecting the animals. If you just walk, they don't do anything. But we have also heard about some other stories of animals, being, chased or anything, fighting, thinking that the other animal was there as a prey or something.
We were really lucky. We had, I think it's from Fonspadon, a dog followers from one village to the next and nearly back again. But I put my dog in the swimming pool in the picnic area, and he decided then she didn't smell so good anymore. So
these people from the UK.
Yeah. But as far as going past cattle and sheep and things, we never had any trouble. And we did have quite a few German Shepherds loose on the trail, and we never really knew how that was going to pan out. But they just carried on walking down the street usually, or just came for a quick sniff at the dogs and then carried on. But it was a bit intimidating sometimes because you never knew if there was going to be a hostile moment. But yeah, just trying to stay calm really and just let them be natural.
Yeah, I guess if the owner is calm and the animals are calm, everything will come out just as it's supposed to be.
It has its best chance of, yeah.
And how was as you say, you slept some days in your camper, then some of the days you were carrying your tent, and I guess some of the days you probably like a good bed like anybody else. And how easy was to find a place that allows you both your animals? Because you weren't traveling just with one dog, you were traveling with two dogs. Was that an easy task to find a place where you can stay with both of them?
it became quite apparent that it was quite hard, but I think that was my language barrier as well at the Albergs, trying to get somewhere to stay, because I did meet a German man walking with his collie, and he'd managed to find accommodation every single night. He was just literally walking with the dog's food, and that was it. He was on his way back from Santiago, incidentally. He was walking all the way back to Germany.
Wow, all the way back.
Yeah, he'd walked all the way there in 6 weeks, and he was walking all the way back. Yeah.
Wow.
I met him going into Zubiri, so we had a good chat. But I ended up using booking.com and using the filter for the dogs. But the first time I used it, I got to the bed and breakfast in question, and the owner said that he'd already let the room out for the dogs. So he had his father had an accommodation up the road, so I was able to stay there instead, and I got looked after really well.
Okay, so at least, they were a great finding a good way to, because one of the things I found out with booking.com, and we have a partnership with them, so if anybody wants to or use booking.com, please use our link, and we'll get a little, we get like a 5% of the percentage that they get, but you still pay the same amount of money. So it's great if you guys out there want to use it. But what I found out is we were helping a lady from France who was doing the Camino on a hand chair. She was paralyzed. And we found out that a lot of times that we were looking for places that were, available for people in a wheelchair. Once you call them, some of them, they weren't that prepared for a wheelchair. Is the same way with dogs and booking, or if they put that they allow dogs, is there no problem with the dogs, the amount of dogs, or the breed of the dog?
I had no trouble with the breed of the dogs, but after the first instance of that happening and realising that they tended to have an allocated room or like a couple of rooms for dogs, I always booked the room and then emailed them ahead or tried to phone to say, is this acceptable, this booking? And I was really looked after. A bit further down, I booked a room, and the couple were from Uruguay. They just set up their bed and breakfast. They upgraded our room, so we had a balcony to go out on. They really looked after us. And then another place, our room was absolutely perfect for the dogs. They had no trouble. But then when we got to Santiago, I had to change my booking there because their accommodation had already booked out for the dogs. So
how easy was to find a place in Santiago? Because along the Camino, I know that there's a lot of places, but I guess it's more easily as you don't go into a town that is always full of people. Was it harder to find a good place in Santiago, or was it still the same?
It wasn't too bad. I had a leaflet given to me by a guy walking his German Shepherd back from Santiago with accommodation that I could use, but they were booked up. I ended up in a motel, which was really just perfect for the dogs.
What was the name of the hotel? I don't like to make people on one, but if a good place is great and they treat pilgrims well, and like that, I think it's great for the people to know. And I love when I go to Santiago, I always stay in the Say Albergue, but.
I will pop you the list over of the accommodation.
And we will show it to people, because that's one of the things, we always make comments with the bad accommodations, but we don't try to publish the good ones. And I think that's something that we have to encourage people. And myself, I used to do it. Every time you go to a restaurant, you get bad services, you go to Google, it's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. But when you get a good service, we don't tend to do it. And with animals and with things, I know that as I talk with many people that have albergues and hotels, it's something extra that they have to do. They also sometimes they get in trouble with the other hostess or the other people or the other pilgrims, because people sometimes, as we know, some people, they don't like animals, and I get it. But it's something that we have to be thankful for, and also if they treat you so well, it's something that I love to give that people a shout out. So if anyone is in your situation and they are looking for a place, let's promote the good ones.
That I quite agree. It's good, and also you find doing the last 100 kilometers of the Camino, you have a lot more people turning up with their dogs to do that than the rest of the Camino. So the accommodations do have to, or should really start to look a bit more amenable. I mean, there were some people walking it with dogs that were happy to leave them outdoors all night, just, tethered in the street, but my two aren't used to that, so it wasn't
and also as we look forward to the Sacobian and more people getting out there, I don't think if you wouldn't sleep yourself on the streets, why will you let your dog sleep on the street? Even if it's safe or whatever, I can understand hotels or anything having a place for them. If it's not in your room, that's okay, but leaving your dog on the street, that can lead to so many unpleasant things that we don't want to hear about. It's so much easier if we all know where to go, how to find it, and as you said, call in advance or send an email in advance to check with them, just in case. Because as that happens to you, if there is some problem, they will always find a place to put you and your dog. I talk to people that travel the Camino with donkeys, and they've always found a place. So if they can find a place for a donkey, I bet anyone can find a place for a dog. And if you don't find that place, give us a call and we will try to find it for you. But there is always a solution, and always the Camino provides, as they say.
Yeah, definitely so.
And how was the arrival with the two dogs to Santiago how was walking in with two dogs on your side, finally making the big entrance into Santiago?
It was really fantastic. We stayed at the campsite just on the outskirts of the Santiago.
The Monte de Gozo?
Yeah. And so we walked down, and there were quite a considerable amount of people walking in. That was a Saturday morning. We walked into Santiago, and it was just such a fantastic atmosphere, and plenty of people were stopping to take photographs as we walked in at the monuments and the statues and things. And I was looking out for the pilgrim statues, and we found them. A lot of people walked past and didn't see them, which I was quite
it's one of the things, because you have to take the detour for like 1K, and people, I think, they are so focused with them. Oh no, Santiago. And I myself, the first time I went by, I'm like, I come back later, but I went by, I'm like, I don't care about the pilgrim statue. I'm like, I'm going to Santiago. But it is such an incredible place that is so worth to take that. For me, the second time, it was like a little decompression. I'm like, after walking, you go there, and then just when you realize you have your own time. But it is quite.
It was quite peaceful over there, because so many people were missing the statues, and then it was nice to join back, because it was almost like walking in with a troop of ants into the city. It was quite atmospheric. It was a beautiful day. There were fireworks going off, in the middle of the day, and. You went through the outskirts, which are more modern, into the real old town, and it's really big. I didn't expect the old township of Santiago to be quite so big.
I'm like, there is only old town. There's not really much. A lot of people, when they think about Santiago, they think it's a huge town, and it isn't. It's mostly a college town and tourism. It's not really big. The biggest cities in Galicia are the other two, But it looks like a big town, but it's mostly just the old town and then the outskirts. But it is quite impressive when you go into it.
It is. It's beautiful. I'm a country girl, so I'm not used to cities really. And no, it was just such a capturing atmosphere walking through. And then as you got close to the cathedral, there were like mime artists and statues in crowds of people. There was live music going on. It was just really such a lovely atmosphere, really, really lovely. And then after being there for about an hour, watching like people watching, because I wasn't able to go in, which is why
that's the question that I had in my mind right now. I'm like, how do you do every day to go to the toilet, go to a restaurant? And when you arrive to Santiago, just to go on the cathedral and being able to hug the saint like anybody else, were you able to do all of that?
No, that's why I'd like to come back without the dogs, just for one trip, to actually see the ceremony at Santiago Cathedral, because I wasn't able to do it. I did meet a family outside that I'd met a few days before, but I just felt really cheeky asking them to look after my dogs for an hour because, you know, it's their trip as well. So, but they pointed me in the right direction for the office for the Compostela, and they were really good there. They let me take the dogs into the garden while we. The security there were fantastic. Yeah,
that's great to know, because also some people complain about the Compostela office, and I think they do a great job, and mostly all of them are volunteers, so remember that. Also, one of the things, I don't know if you know that there's a pilgrim passport for the dogs. Were you carrying that for your dogs at the time?
No, I didn't know that at all.
So yeah, there is an association in Galicia. It's called Alpaca. And what they do, they also try to educate people on how, you know, we have to deal with animals in the Camino. A lot of people, when they walk, they see dogs and they think that they are free dogs. I'm like, no, they belong to the village. They are just there because they're looking for food. So if you give them food, they will follow you, and they don't know how to come back to their house. So they are trying to, you know, to inform people on how they have to deal with this situation. Also, they give information for every pilgrim that is traveling with animals. Last month, there was also 2 pilgrims from Korea that they adopted a dog from Spain, and now they are living in Korea, the 3 of them. And they developed this kind of like the Peregrino Compostela. So for anyone listening, if they are traveling with a dog, they can get a passport for the dogs, and they can be, you know, put the stamp. And once they arrive to Compostela, if they go to this association, they will get a Compostela certificate for the dogs.
That's brilliant.
And like, they do walk it, so they deserve some kind of, you know, paper. And a lot of people complain, why they don't get a Compostela? I'm like, the Compostela is what it is. You know, if you're a kid, if you're a baby, if you are not doing it for religious reasons, you don't get the Compostela. The Compostela is a certification of a pilgrimage. If you are not doing a pilgrimage, that the word means, you know, religious or a spiritual journey, you get your distance certificate. So let's be clear on all of that, and just don't, some people, they get over so pissed. I'm like, it is on the website, just check it. But I think this is a great idea to give something for the animals too. So now you have a reason to do it by yourself and to do it with them again.
Oh yes.
So now that you have walked it, what will be your advice for people walking with dogs, you know, from abroad? I'm like, as you have now all these different up and downs and so many different, you know, situations that you have to deal with, what will be your top 3, you know, advice for people out there?
It would be to try and research as much as possible, although no matter how much research you do, you've got to be prepared to adapt. But that's the same for any Camino, with or without dogs, with children, what have you. And then it's just making sure you work as a team together. It's not about the end goal of getting to Santiago. It's just enjoying the trip for what it is and what it brings to you all each day, and making it very enjoyable, you know. And then it's just making sure you all stay healthy and in condition to enjoy it, you know.
Did you have any problem with your pets along the Camino? And any time you have to visit the vet or anything?
The only time I had to visit the vet was leaving Spain, because they needed a worming tablet to get back to the UK, which is part of regulation. It has to be administered less than 4 days before going, but over 24 hours. It's like a window that you've got to have it done. So I could have had it done in France, but I chose to have it done in Spain because it gave me 2 days to drive back through France.
Was that easy for you to find a vet to do it?
Yes. I ended up in Irun, and the vet there was really good. The advice would be, though, anywhere near a port or airport or near the Eurotunnel, you could be paying quite a considerable amount for the worming tablets. Whereas in somewhere that's less known, I paid €20 for both tablets altogether and all the paperwork to be signed. But I have known that near the ferry port in France, it's been €130 per dog.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow, that's
very
quite.
excited.
I'm guess if you have the business, why not using it? No, I guess if people want to take their dogs, it's like everything.
It's all about location, isn't it?
Yeah,
But yeah.
it is. Okay, thank you so much, Amanda. If we will leave their notes, all the places that we talk about, where to stay, all the information for traveling from the UK, and we will keep you guys posted if there's any change of the regulations. And we will also leave you the Instagrams for Amanda, so you can check her amazing journey with both dogs and the quite beautiful pictures. And when is the next Camino going to be, Amanda? Are you planning on this year or maybe looking for the Sacobeo?
Yes, I'm looking at trying to come over April if I can.
And are you going to do again the Frances or looking for a new route?
I'm hoping to do the Francais if I can. It's just sorting whether I can get the care for my dogs. If not, I'll be coming with them again. So.
Okay, we will see you in Pamplona. Let us know, and we will give you, if it's just you or if it's you, the three of you, we will find somebody to take care of them while we enjoy the tapas and the beer and the wine over here.
That sounds perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Buen camino.
Thank you. Buen camino. Take care.
Thank you everyone for listening to El Camino People, the podcast. We will be keeping you updated with all the latest information about the Camino de Santiago and how things, evolve here in Spain. As we know so far, things can change every day. It looks like we're going to be under quarantine at home till May 9th, but still, the borders and everything remain closed. The Camino is still closed, and we don't have really any real news to give you about now. It seems like the Camino will be, looking at the Sacobeo maybe getting extended next year because it seems like it won't be open, probably in January. So we will keep you updated. Please listen to the podcast and keep coming in for the live every day at 7 p.m. Spanish time on Instagram. We will keep inviting pilgrims all over the world, and if you want to be one of those, just send me a message. We will be gladly interview you live on Instagram. Other than that, if you also want to be invited to the podcast, send us an email to peregrino@elcaminopeople.com and we will get in touch with you. Buen camino to all of you. Stay at home. Ultrella.